So let's start up. I don't want to keep you waiting here. You know, everything we're talking about here is really fundamentally based on leadership starts here. And what I mean by leadership starts here, it starts with your decision-making process. Today, we're going to be talking about the nature of leading change. And we're going to talk about it slightly differently. You can always go see what Cotter has to say about his 7 steps of change, which all make a lot of sense. What we're going to spend time on is what's the leadership decision-making process that leads you to be able to make the decisions appropriately, engage your people well, and be able to have the process work smoothly. Because as we all know, the statistics on change are terrible. 3/4 of most change efforts fail to meet their objectives. And we're going to talk about what you can do so that doesn't happen. You know the steps of change. We're going to spend the time on how you communicate, think through the process, and make it happen. So today it's going to be very interactive. Feel free to step in at any point. You have the opportunity to unmute yourself and just ask a question as we go forward. You don't need to wait for those specific moments. So let's start off here. I'm going to run through this. So we're talking about keys to effectively leading change under all circumstances. So my intentions today, change being one of the most important, significant, obvious, and continuous issues we're dealing with everywhere as leaders. You know, what are some of the challenges of change? What are some of the process gaps that actually cause change to be difficult? What are some of the bridges to success, and how do you apply that in the situations you're dealing with? So I believe that everybody here is actually coach consultant side, correct, Stephen? Is that what you do?
I'm not so much in the coaching. I do the consulting, yes.
Got it. Gwen, coach consultant. Frederic, I think you're coach consultant as well, correct?
Yeah, I'm more coach than consultant.
Got it. I do both as well. So everything we're talking about applies to your clients and how you can really work with them in a way. So it's not just the standardized, here's the 7 steps of change, but how you can get to the leadership level and the leadership decision-making process and communication in a way that will enhance the effectiveness of everything they're doing here. So let's get a little bit of inspiration for decision-making. Here's some of my favorite quotes. Max Planck, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And this is so fundamental to everything that we do. Bill George, who used to run Medtronics and is a professor at Harvard Business School, speaks very well when he talks about gaining alignment with the mission and values of the organization. And until we get everybody on the same page about who we are and what we believe, it's really difficult to move things. This is one of the most commonsensical conversation in quotes I've ever seen. You manage things, you lead people. We're talking about people are the essence of making change work. And one of my favorites, clarity is power. Everybody used to grew up listening to knowledge is power, clarity is power, and especially when it's clear about what's most important. So what are the challenges of change today? What would you say the challenges of change are? And I have a picture of a 747 with United, who was one of the first to fly the 747, because they no longer fly the 747, one of the most ubiquitous planes in the world at one time, basically disappearing off the face of the earth. So, question. What are your change challenges? What questions do you have? What would you like today? So let's just take a moment. Anything specific? Gwen, Frederic, Stephen?
Well, I think in any environment where you're talking about change and you're planning to have that initial meeting with folks to say, hey, there's going to be a whole bunch of change.
Right.
One of the most common things that comes up is still, it's common still with COVID today. And that's, well, what if this whole thing crashes? That's a great idea you have, but you're going to wreck the company. You're going to wreck everything that's going. This is all just going to be terrible.
So the old story of what if, and the what ifs almost invariably are negatives. It's one of those situations where if you're waiting for your spouse or one of your kids and they're 15 minutes late, we don't think about, oh, traffic was bad. We're thinking, did something bad happen? So, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but that's a predisposition for most people around the world. I've worked with people from 45 countries. And I ask this question all the time. Think of an intense experience in your life. I give them a few seconds. Everybody got an intense experience? Good. So at the moment it happened, not now, but at the moment it happened, would you consider that a positive or negative experience? And the statistics are clear, whether I'm in Europe, Asia, or the Americas, 75+% of the people pick a negative experience as their version of an intense experience. So we're pre-wired to be fearful. I mean, that goes back 10,000 years of human development. So when people hear change, they don't think about, wow, things could get better. The first impulse 3/4 of the time is likely to be what humans do 3/4 of the time, which is, oh my gosh, what if something goes worse than we have it now? Gwen, Frederic, any particular questions, challenges?
I was just thinking, just motivating, getting people excited about change.
So I'm going to suggest something that nobody's going to get excited about change. What they could get excited about is the result of that change. And right there is part of the bridge building process we'll do today. Frederic, anything in particular?
It's in the same direction. It's how to motivate, how to inspire, how to empower. If the wish is also to empower more people, how to make it easy for accepted. I mean, in some culture, I work a lot in countries like India and Africa and all that,
Right.
and where hierarchy is it's in their culture. I mean, they're very respectful of what the boss says and don't question that. And if you leave it like this, the change is not gonna happen very simply. So it's how you deal with those culture where there's a certain, let's call it, traditional way of leading people, which you want to change.
Right, it's very hierarchical. This is great. Okay, those are really good frameworks, and we'll look at this. Part of what goes on that addresses all of these is literally about how we frame the issue of change. Nobody is particularly thrilled about change because, one of the things we always say, the greatest impediment to change. Always ask that question when people are looking at change. What's the greatest impediment to change? And very rarely people really answer the way I always say. The greatest impediment to change are habits. Whether they're built into the culture, they're built into humans, people are used to doing things a certain way. Habits are your greatest impediment to change. And the only way to change habits is to make something so compelling that they embrace the change. So here's one of the ways to start to do it with your own experience. Think about some of the best and most successful changes that you've been through or you've helped your clients through, and some of the most challenging and difficult changes. Because we want to really start to understand from your own experience what makes change successful, what makes it challenging. You're starting to speak to some of it, what if issues, being motivated or not motivated, being inspired and empowered versus having to just follow the boss. So anything in particular that, I just want you to do this for yourself, because we're going to test everything we're doing against your own experience. So if you take a look at some of your best and most successful changes and some of the most difficult ones, just have those for yourself. And then we'll test them against what we're doing here. So we talk about the ultimate business leadership foundation. This is fundamental to what we talk about. This is the Venn diagram. There's another circle that goes with this, and that's their technical capability. But fundamentally, leadership requires what we call strategic alignment, which means alignment around the vision, mission, goals, and strategies. An organization lacking that will be inherently inefficient, ineffective, and will never achieve its full potential. If we look to the other side, client value delivery, if you're not creating value across the board, you're going to run into trouble. It's not whether your product or your services are good, but do the clients get the value of what you're doing? And the third key circle is really leading change. And it used to be leading change was a big thing that we would throw initiatives on. Today, if we're not successfully and continuously leading change, we've got some very, very serious issues to deal with. When you look at the intersection of what we have here, when we're delivering value to client and leading change, this is the area where innovation shows up, where the needs and the demands and the opportunities and even the asked for ones and the unforeseen ones show up in the opportunity for innovation, both in the way we operate internally, that's our internal change, and the way we deliver client value. When we start to look at strategic alignment, our alignment around vision, around mission, around our top strategic priorities, and we start to lead change to put it there, to be able to be congruent, consistent, and aligned there, this is where you develop a high performance culture. And where we have alignment with the vision and mission and strategic objectives and our clients' value delivery, that's where we have maximum business impact. All of this comes together under ultimate business leadership. We're going to show you how that really works today, in particular, emphasizing how we do that leading change. If you care to have these slides, just simply send an email to info@optimizeintl.com. Just write Leadership Council slides. We'll send them over to you. Happy to share this with you. So you're going to see this a few times today. WIMI stands for me. What is most important? So what is most important for organizational success? And I've got here a list of things that we have distilled from a lot of our top leaders that make the difference. Compelling vision of the future, mission people rally around, clarity and focus on their most important results, strategies to achieve those results. This is basic common sense leadership. And our decision-making process is often lacking some of these four. But also, how do we do effective, efficient execution and attract, develop, and retain our top talent? Also, we need to be able to deal with these for organizational success: client-focused people and processes, valuable products and services. We have a thriving, engaged culture. And the articulation that I like about this, embracing change as appropriate, because change is going to be consistently appropriate, and to embrace it appropriately is one of the real key issues. The question we're dealing with today is, how do you get to these on a consistent basis? And this is the essence of what we talk about leadership decision-making process. Today, the focus again is on leading change here. But here's what we talk about: the power of positive process and the pain of process gaps. So let's open up the vault and see what we have. Here's the game changers that we're going to talk about. The biggest trapdoors. The biggest trapdoors are where people do not see what it is that matters, do not see why they should care, and do not understand why we're doing what we're doing. It's that simple. We'll explore it a little more deeply. The biggest elevators are exactly the opposite. People understand the value of what we're trying to create, the importance to them of what it could mean for them and their organization, and why it matters. So this is really about the relationship between leadership and decision-making process. So a lot of times when we start to work with clients, we ask them the question, what's their process for the compelling vision and a mission people rally around? Clarity and focus on their most valuable results, their strategies, their talent attraction. I mean, these are just the basic premises of what they need as a business. What's their process for this? So I'm going to stop for a moment and ask you, what's your process for generating these? And I'm sure this is an extraordinarily talented group of consultants and coaches. So we've built some processes, but think about this relative to your leaders that you work with. What are their processes for doing these? The most common decision-making process I hear is colloquially called throw it against the wall and see what sticks. That's the trial and error way of doing things. Henry Ford had a great quote about that. He said, "The school of experience is the best one there is. However, by the time you graduate, you're too old, too tired, or too poor to do anything about it." It was one of the great testimonials for education. And as we start to look at what are leaders' processes for actually ensuring these are clearly thought through, well articulated, able to be communicated, and meaningful to the people that they're communicating to, whether they're internal or external. So when I look at this, and I go through this with clients over the last 20 plus years, what I find is that very, very little process is in place. What they tend to do is make up rules for inaction, for putting into action. Let me be really clear about that. They make up rules or structures. You have to do this, you have to do that, rather than have organic process that can be understood for what it's meant to be, what it's meant to do, and how it's meant to be implemented. So I want you to stop for a second and think about how much process is there behind these critical factors that drive your organizations. So this is where the leadership gap starts here. So where do you think it starts? Anybody? And we're talking about it to a large degree here. Where does the leadership gap start? And especially relative to change, where does the leadership gap start and manifest itself in the most challenging ways?
I'll just say what I see in the companies I work with a lot of times, unclear thinking at the top of the organization, and then unclear communication when they, even if they do have clarity.
Yeah, Gwen, you're pointing to two of the three most critical ones, and the one that you skipped is actually the one that we're talking about here. I agree with you, is that unclear thinking and unclear communication, but usually that derives from unclear and poor or inferior decision-making process, where they come together with a specific need or issue or topic or plan. And what they do is they just make up stuff. There's no coherence to it, which means it's hard to communicate. It's hard to really come back and really address what were the strengths or the weaknesses of the process, because there really was no process. It was just a free-for-all in a room where we came up with something that needed to be decided. So again, I'm going to just, give you my answer. I believe it starts with decisions from an inferior or lacking decision-making process. And what happens is, Gwen, you're exactly right. It leads to poor thinking and very weak communication. Anybody else want to say anything about that? Where do you think the leadership gap starts in most organizations? Because most of you are dealing with many organizations over the years of experience.
Well, in my experience, is really the main thing is inappropriate. I'm not sure that's the proper English word, but inappropriate communication.
Right.
The companies I'm working for, I mean, they spend a lot of time, and the boards spending a lot of time and go really in depth of defining what is the most important things they want to have, to align to, what is the main change they want to facilitate and everything. But it's communicated in a, so they do the whole thinking, and then they share with their team, with their company, say, guys, we want to do this and that, and that isn't it great? So everybody clap. Ah, beautiful, but nobody knows what they have to do to get there. So it's true that there is no process. They give a goal to people or something to achieve, but they don't help them to define a way, a process, to use your words, to get there and create their involvement. So that's the reason why most companies at the end of the year just realize, well, we haven't realized everything we wanted to do, simply because of that.
Right. Frederic, I think that's very well articulated. Once again, I think what you're starting to see here is you're pointing to the real key issues of poor thinking, poor communication, and it's because they have poor process to think through things, and they have poor process of thinking leads to poor process of communication, because there's no fundamental structure that makes sense either to the people making decisions on an ad hoc basis, nor to the people that need to hear what those decisions are and why they matter. So here's what I would say: poor or no decision-making process creates one of these two structures: a massive gap between where they are and where they want to be, or this is the Jenga game. You pull one piece out and everything collapses. So just to really give you a clear picture, I'm sure all of you really understand these. I call it the dirty dozen of issues from poor decision-making process. I mean, started right at the top: lack of engagement around the world, and especially in the United States. They say more than 70% of people in their jobs are disengaged, which means the level of productivity, the level of profitability, the level of possibility that can be attained is massively diminished. Lack of results, lack of communication, lack of leadership effectiveness, lack of priorities, lack of focus on what matters, lack of teamwork, usually goes along with blame and avoidance, lack of integrated cooperation and collaboration. Oh, there's more. Lack of focus on quality client relationships, lack of responsiveness to initiatives, lack of trust in leaders and decisions, lack of consistent improvement, lack of an agreed upon coordinated path forward. We're all familiar with these. We want to talk the rest of the time together. How do changes affect all of these, and what can we do about that? Because again, if you look at these, every one of these issues, and this is the baker's dirty dozen of issues, there's 13 of them. Every single one of these is being addressed and affected and dealt blows to on the basis of consistent change, whether it's internal change, marketplace change, client change, sociological change, pandemic change. It makes no difference what the source of the change is. Change is affecting every single one of these issues, from communication to engagement to teamwork to trust. We need to think about things differently. So let's talk really quickly here about how we bridge the change gap. And this is where the fundamental question, how do we get people to embrace change? And first of all, raising the idea that we're going to have change is rarely going to engage them tremendously. So we'll talk about, the critical pivot points for success. I want to share with those right now. There's really just a few fundamental critical points that when they're well done, and I always talk about things can be done poorly, they can be done well. If they're done well, you can really begin to engage your people to embrace not just the change process, but literally whatever it takes to achieve the result. So in the simplest way of talking about this, we talk about what is most important, why this is or those are the best choices. Those are the fundamentals. When people understand that, and when our decision-making process delivers clarity about that, we have a different structure, foundation, and basis on which to bridge the gap between where they are and where they want to be. And that literally is the change gap. Where are we and where we want to be? There's usually a chasm between these two places. How do we build that bridge that's going to get us there? So let's just stop for a moment. Any thoughts or questions? We're putting together a real fundamental thought process here, which is our decision-making process needs to clearly articulate in a compelling and clear way what's most important and why they're the best choices. Those two clear outcomes will drive everything else that needs to happen in a change process. Now, of course, good quality process is required, but this is usually where the gap is from a leadership point of view. It's not clear what's most important. It's not clear why that's the best choice. We've just made up a decision and we're asking you to embrace it and do what it takes to get there. You can see the difference between having a clear outcome and a compelling reason why it matters and being able to just say, you need to do this. Thoughts or questions? Nick, I appreciate your comment that change can be intimidating to those set in their ways, which is why most change is considered to be very difficult. Even if we have a process for saying we're going to go from here to there, it's hardly engaging. And Frederic, to your point, when you have very hierarchical cultures, and even in the United States and most of the advanced world, the cultures are still highly hierarchical. The boss says this, the CEO wants that, the division head's claiming this is what we need. Rarely does that get opposed in a way that's constructive and builds a better path forward, because they're afraid to confront bad decision making on the basis of their boss's determination that this is the thing to do. So for all of us, the most important piece for us to really understand here is the clearer the decision-making process, the better the thinking and the more likelihood it can be communicated in a really high quality, essential way. Any other thoughts? Marcos, I love what you said. You're right on target in a lot of ways. We'll expand it a little bit. But Marcos says to get a clear decision-making process, it's necessary to have a clear company mission statement. And actually your mission statement's addressing why we're making these choices. Our job is to ensure that that mission statement is consistent with the choices. It's part of the decision-making process. You're pointing to a really good place here. So let's just talk about a few bridge building axioms. When we talk about the bridge between where we are and where we're going from a leadership decision-making point of view, here's some of the things. What's most important is always what's most important. And rarely is it clear enough for everybody to understand that it's important. Results are worth multiples of any activity. So many change initiatives that I've seen are actually a large, complex web of activities without a clear indication about what's the most important results we're trying to achieve. So what we're doing is we're telling them, here's how to build the bridge, and they have no idea where the bridge is going. They have no idea why the bridge is there, because that's the other part. Why are we building this bridge? For gosh sakes, you're telling us to do all these things, many of which are in conflict with everything we've ever done. And we don't understand what we're getting to, what's the result, and we don't understand why we should be doing this. What's the value proposition? Because the other part is, what's the clarity of outcome? And so I'm sorry, this is an axiom that clarity of outcome and quality of process produces the most outstanding results. And of course, strategic alignment means, Marcos, to your point, it's alignment of vision, mission, goals, and strategies. And what happens is you have to have all of those, or else you're going to have a major gap and an inefficiency in the process. So strategic alignment to me is alignment of vision, mission, goals, and strategy. What's the picture of the future? Why is that matter consistent with our mission? What are our measurable objectives, also known as goals, and how will we get there? So just to be really clear about this, almost all the time, it's not clear what's most important. It's also not clear what the ultimate results are meant to be, because we've got this huge complex activity process going on. And most importantly, we don't understand why the most compelling points for engagement and alignment are in place. We don't know why we're doing what we're doing. So once again, what we're pointing to here is the clearer the outcome and the better the quality of process to get there, in terms of thinking process, communication process, decision-making process, it's going to produce the most outstanding results. And we've got to get those results to align between the vision, the mission, the goals, and the strategies. That's your number one checkpoint. If you can't see an absolute clear alignment between vision, mission, goals, and strategies, and not only of the project or the change or the initiative, but with the organizational vision, mission, goals, and strategies, misalignments cause lack of energy, lack of focus, lack of engagement, and lack of full support for whatever you're doing. Only when you have strategic alignment do you have everybody moving in the same place with a comparable level of commitment that's going to produce the most effective results. Marcos, you made a great comment. To get a clear decision-making process, you need that clear mission statement, but it's, you know, when you're moving forward, emergency solving process needs to be consistent with our understanding of what a normal leadership decision-making process is. Let me say that a little bit more clearly, because I'm thinking as I'm saying that, it's not as clear as it could be. So when you're facing an emergency, the question of what's the basis of your decision-making needs to be clear and consistent, as much as when you're doing long-term strategic planning. So let's take a look at a couple of different ways, because you open it up in a way that's good. Let's talk about decision-making frameworks that affect change. So for me, you know, we start off with, let's talk about levels of decision-making. The lowest level of decision-making to me is that we have clarity about what we're talking about. The issue in emergencies is we're often not clear, what are we trying to fix? And often the clarity is about what's going on in the moment, not what we're trying to end up getting to. So from a leadership decision-making process point of view, clarity always needs to be about what's the result. Remember, go back to that other axiom, results are worth multiples of any activity. So often the question is, are we clear about the results and the important initiatives, results, processes, whatever part we're talking about? Do we have enough clarity about what really matters? If we do, we might ascend to the second level of leadership decision-making. And that's, are we focused? And WIMI, again, what is most important? Do we have focus on what really matters? Or are we being diverted with a lot of, you know, the death by 1,000 cuts, it's called. All these small things that are coming into play keep getting in our way. Do we know what's most important? We've got an identification of an issue, of an emergency, of a pandemic, of a marketplace shift, of a competitor's change, of a merger. Anything that goes on in the normal day-to-day business causes changes to what we're looking at. Are we focused on what's most important, or are we being diverted to things that are less important, more process-oriented? And I mean that in the pejorative sense, not the way we're talking about leadership decision-making process as a high-end art. But are we getting stuck in process about how to do the small thing that doesn't really matter? The third level of decision making to me is the first level of real leadership decision making. And that's what choices will have an impact. And of course, what are we looking to have an impact on? What's most important. Because if we can't impact what's most important, we're probably not being a very effective leader. And ultimately, this is the highest level of leadership decision making. It's what I call leverage. Are we creating the environment and the opportunities for others to make an impact? Because if as senior leaders, we're spending all our time making the impact, we're not creating the kind of organization that'll ever create leverage where we can grow and we can sustainably grow because we've got others and we've got the opportunity and the structure and the people who can also make an impact. So a lot of times we start to ask the question, what level of decision making are we talking about? And I can't tell you how many times the majority of the answer is we're trying to get clear about what we need to focus on. We don't even know what we really should be talking about. We don't even know what the clarity should be about. So that's one of the most important pieces here. So let's talk about not only now we know a little bit about what level of decision making we want to be at, but let's also talk about the level of engagement. So here's what we start to talk to. You know, there's 4 levels of engagement. And Frederic, what you're dealing with when you start talking about these super hierarchical organizations is people simply say, I have to do it, I don't have choice. It's the lowest level of compliance. And think about it for yourself when you have something you need to do at home or at work. You know, and go, I got to do this, I have to do this, I should do this. And the level of engagement, the level of motivation, the level of enthusiasm is usually about as low as it can be because you're only doing it because somebody who has some influence or impact on you says you have to do it. Lowest level of compliance. Next level is I need to do it. You know, it's a little more inspiring, but minimally so. So when you say I need to do something, I'll give you an example for me. I'm finishing up my second book, which is actually titled Leadership Starts Here. And I said for a long time, I need to do this book. How fast do you think that got done? Not very, right? I need to do it. You can think about it for yourself. When you need to do something, how much does that inspire you? How much does that move you? How much does that motivate you? And I would say the answer is not a lot. The first level where you really have engagement, and this is really important for how do you really decide what's going to work when we try to get people together here? What's going to work when we try to really get people to understand what we're doing? We need to get them to the level of at least that I want to be a part of this, because that's your first level of real internal engagement and motivation. I want to be a part of this. I want to do this. I want to support this. I want to make this happen. I want to have this be a success that I'm a part of. Now you're talking about level of engagement and I think level of motivation, and that's where that comes from. But the highest level of engagement in the simplest form is, I love to. I can see how powerful this is. I would love to have this accomplishment. And let's go back again. Results are worth multiples of activity. The first order of business for us is to engage people to want to or love to be a part of creating a result, not being a signee into a process. So the critical issue here is, are we getting them clear about wanting to or loving to be a part of an accomplishment that would be compelling and meaningful to them and to their organization? That's where you really start to have motivation. And when they can see where they'd love to have this outcome, they would love to be a part of being instrumental in making an outcome of this value happen. Now you've got them fully engaged. And a lot of times you don't even have to explain the process. What you need to do is make sure they're invested in the result, because the process, as we know, fundamental to all change, is the changes will change as well. So let's get right into how do we build the bridge across the chasm. So the building blocks to me start with what we've talked about. Where are they? Where do they need to be? Because that's what the bridge building is. We need to identify what's the gap. And this is where it becomes powerful, because when they understand, most people understand where they are. I'm used to doing things this way. I know this is how we can be, at least the minimally successful we've been for so long. When change happens, we need to get them clear about where do they need to be? And more importantly, where do they want to be? because when you get them engaged with where do they want to be and they see the gap, they're already beginning to get inspired to say, how do we bridge the gap? And that's our job as leaders, to make sure we help them understand what would make the journey valuable, not only for us as an organization, but also for them as people who are part of the organization. So the personal engagement that would make it valuable for them is also as important as why it's valuable for the organization. Either usually is helpful, both together is instrumental. And fundamentally, we always need to be able to talk about why those are the best choices. Because if they don't understand that these are the best choices, they're going to constantly be wondering, why are we doing it this way? Instead of being able to answer the question, we know why we're doing it this way. We know what we're trying to accomplish. We know where we're going. We know why we're going there. And we know how valuable it is, and I'm invested. So a lot of times, the outcome is what people will really invest themselves, their motivation, their initiative, their responsibility in. Being told to do certain things is about as unmotivating as it can get. Being asked to be a part of accomplishing something valuable and them understanding what that result exactly is and why it matters is the differentiating factor between a really highly engaged and successful change process and one that's going to be, we're driving them by kicking and pushing and beating them. As they say, the beatings will continue till morale improves. So let's take a look at some examples here. Anybody have a particular situation? Because I'd love to see both ones that have worked, and let's see if we can dissect it on the basis of these principles, or ones that you're in the middle of or you're challenged by. Anybody have a specific?
Well, I'll just say, what I do. Well, first of all, I work with industries where they deal with a lot of change, both science and technology industries. But
right.
One of the things I work with is like trying to help them improve their leadership practices. And that's a change for them. They're really used to just doing, they don't invest, they just expect people to, magically figure out, or that quote you had, that just by learning how to do these things, and they lose incredible value. So I would love to have some tools to help these companies change how they develop their leaders, because they're losing incredible value and productivity, performance, et cetera, because they're not doing it.
So Gwen, you're raising a very important issue, and I'm going to tell you fundamentally what it sounds like is they don't understand why that would make a difference. They don't understand the value proposition of leadership development. And so they find it hard to do, conceptually agree and practically ignore.
Yes, so I think that's probably a good idea, yeah.
Yeah, so again, one of the challenges is always understanding what's the outcome. So what does good leadership look like in a case like that? Because you're dealing with technical experts. And there's something that I call the expertise trap, where they get so deep in their expertise, and they're probably perhaps the best of the best at what they do. They can't understand why people don't listen to them. They can't understand why when they give a solution, people aren't buying it because they are the smartest, the best, the most experienced. And of course, we know why that doesn't work, because just because you might think you're the best of the best, or may even be acknowledged as the best of the best, until I see the value for myself, I don't really care about everything you can do. And when you start to look at leadership development, conceptually, it's a really smart thing to do. But tell me what results I'm going to have. Tell me what gap I'm bridging, and help me really understand why that would be valuable. So right now, the most fundamental, what's the results that will transform for me? Why would those matter to me in the organization? And those are probably gaps in the decision-making process that they haven't completed. They're just going, yes, we need leadership development. Isn't it obvious? Isn't it something that everybody needs? And the answer is, a lot of your folks are answering, no, not really. Makes sense, common sense. Everybody has an old 80-20 rule. I have a new 80-20 rule I've been using for 20 years. It goes like this. 80% of success is common sense. Less than 20% of the people are using it. So again, it sounds commonsensical. It's probably a good territory, but what's the real result? Why would that matter to me as well as the organization? But thank you, Gwen. I think, you're identifying one of the biggest challenges we face all the time in our conversations, which is making sure that the outcome is clear, concise, well thought through, and supports our vision and our mission. Because again, one of the processes that I see all the time, people make up objectives and then they spend all their time working on strategies, but there's no validation for why that goal or that objective makes any sense, has any value, or is meaningful to us or the organization. That helpful?
Yes, very, actually. Yes.
Yeah.
Very helpful.
Stephen, did you have one you wanted to raise?
I'm good. Thanks.
Good. Anybody else? We'll jump back in here. All right, let's pull ourselves right back into this here. Whoops, wrong one. So here we are, the bridge building axioms. And again, Gwen, I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. What's most important is what's always most important here, right? But more importantly, here's what we really want to do is we want to be in a position, whoops, back you go. Building blocks are really as simple as they can be. Where are they? Where do they need to be? Where do they want to be? And is that gap clear? So again, just, specific to what you said, do they understand where they are relative to where they could be as an individual, as a leader, as a manager, as an organization? Do they understand where they want to be, not just need to be, but want to be as a leader, as a team, as an organization? And is the gap clear enough and compelling enough is really the question about what would make the journey valuable. And then they've got to answer the question, why is this the best choice? Because until they do, there's no desire to invest in building the bridge. So you get a half-finished bridge here. They start building and then they go, why are we doing this? And that's the biggest question that I get asked all the time. When you're dealing with change initiatives, when you're dealing with even small things, let's not even talk major initiatives. The first question that comes up from most of the people when you ask, how are you doing, is they're going, why are we doing this? And when you get that question, you know what the problem is.